Good morning, Veritas. Today is Monday, May 18th, 2020. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We're going to get started right away on our Google Classroom assignment from today, May 18th, 2020. So number one says this is a mental math problem, which means you must do the math in your head. So we're not going to have to actually do any math. I'm going to show you some math to prove why these answers are correct. But this is the type of math that we want you to try doing in your head. Okay, so most math we don't want you doing in your head. But I want you to try these in your head, because once you learn this kind of rule, then this rule in math, you'll be able to use this as we move forward and do some of it in your head. Okay, so it says write less than 1, equal to 1, or greater than 1 on each line below. So that is our directions. We're going to write either less than 1, equal to 1, or greater than 1 on each line. Okay? So part A says 2/3 times 1. Is it less than, equal to, or greater than 1? So here's 1. If we had 2/3 one time, 2/3 times 1, then we have 1. It equals 2/3. 2/3 times 1 is 2/3. So since 3/3 would be 1, 2/3 is less than 1. So 2/3 times 1 is less than 1. And we know that because we're taking a fraction of a whole number. So when you multiply a whole number like 1 times a fraction is less than 1. So that means our answer is going to be less than this other factor. If you are multiplying this number times a fraction that's less than 1, then the answer is going to be less than this factor here. It happens to be 1 this time, but no matter what this was, if you're multiplying it times a fraction, that's going to get smaller when you have the product, because you're multiplying it by something that's less than 1. So it's going to be smaller. Okay, so 2/3, a fraction less than 1, times 1 is going to be less than 1. Okay, so let's go to B. We have 4/4 times 1. Now 4/4 is equal to 1. If you had a model here with fourths, and you color all 4/4 in, you colored in the whole thing. So 4/4 equals 1 whole. So what we're doing here is 1 times 1, it's going to be equal to 1. So anytime you multiply a number times a fraction that's equal to 1, it's going to stay the same. So in this case, it's going to stay as a 1. If we were doing what's 4/4 times 3, that's really doing 1 times 3. It would stay as 3. But since we're multiplying it times 1, it's 1 times 1. It's equal to 1 for part B. Okay? Now let's go to C. 1/4 times 1. Again, we have a fraction that's less than 1. So if we multiply this number times something that's less than 1, it is going to get smaller. Okay? So this happens to be 1, so it's going to be less than 1. But no matter what number that is, if you're multiplying a whole number times a fraction, if the fraction is less than 1 and you're multiplying it times this factor, that factor is going to get smaller if this is less than 1. So part C, 1/4 times 1 is 1/4, 1 time. So it's just 1/4, and that again is less than 1. Okay, D, 8/5 times 1. Now, 8/5 is greater than 1 because 5/5 is equal to 1. So 8/5, and if we have that 1 time, it's going to be greater than 1. So you got to look at the factors when you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number. This fraction is greater than 1. So no matter what, when you multiply it times this whole number, that whole number is going to get bigger because you're multiplying it by more than 1. And it's going to get bigger. So then it's going to be greater than 1. Right? If we look at this, 8/5. So since 5/5 is equal to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/5 would be this whole thing. 8/5 would be this cut into 5 also. And then 6/5, 7/5. There's 8/5. 5/5 here plus 3/5 makes 8/5. So since that's more than 1, this is 1, so that's more than 1, we know it's greater than 1. Okay, E, 7/7 times 1. So 7/7 is equal to 1. 7/7 is the whole thing. So 1 times 1 is equal to 1. Okay, we're multiplying a whole number times a fraction that's equal to 1. So this factor is going to stay the same because we multiplied it by 1. And anytime you multiply something by 1, it doesn't really change. It stays the same. Okay, last one for these. 11/5 times 1. Now 5/5 is equal to 1, so 11/5 is more than 1. So if we're multiplying 1 times a number that's more than 1, it's going to be greater than 1. Okay? So, like, just think of an example for this. If you were to multiply 1 times anything that's more than 1, if we multiply it at 2 times 1, it's going to be 2. It's going to be greater than the original one. If we took 3 times 1, it's going to be 3. It's going to be greater than the original one. So if we have a fraction that's more than 1, this is like a little more than 2, right? 10/5 would be 2. So this fraction is more than 2. So it's like we're doing 2 times 1, it's going to be greater than 1. So sometimes it helps to think of some examples here and try to think of these improper fractions as like a number that's greater than 1, because that's what they are. Okay, so look at these carefully. Those are pretty tricky because we haven't done that yet. I used 1 as the other factor just to try to get you to think about looking at the fraction and deciding if that's equal to 1, then it's going to stay the same. If it's greater than 1, like 11/5, it's going to be greater than the original factor. And if it's less than 1, like a regular fraction, 2/3 times 1, it's going to get less because you're multiplying it times a fraction that's less than 1. Okay, give yourself some snaps if you got those. Those are pretty tricky, and we've never really done that before. So great job if you got that. We're going to get some more practice with it in a few minutes. Number 2 says, find the area of the following irregular shape. So if you don't know what irregular means, you see the word regular in it. So irregular means not regular. So this shape is not a regular shape because there's like 2 sections here, right? So we're finding the area of this irregular shape. So area, the formula for area is length times width. They will give you this on your MCAS sheet. They give you a sheet with some different formulas on it, and this is one of the ones that they'll give you. Okay, so the trouble with this is, or the hard part about this is, you have to find the area of the big box, and you have to find the area of the smaller box, and then you have to add those 2 sections together. So if we find the area of this big square, it's 10 times 10. The area of that is 100 meters squared because we're doing meters times meters. So there's 2 meters. Meters times themselves twice. Meters times meters would be meters squared. So the area of this big box is 10 times 10, or 100 meters times meters, or meters squared, or meters to the second power. Now this little box is length times width is 4 times 8. So 4 times 8 is 32. Meters times meters is meters squared. So now we have the big section is 100, the small section is 32. So to find out the total area, to find the area of the whole thing is 100 plus 32, which is 132. And since this is meters squared and this is meters squared, we have the same unit. We're adding meters squared plus meters squared, so that's going to still be meters squared. It doesn't become meters to the 4th power because it's meters times meters, meters times meters, and it stays as meters times meters. Okay, so 132 meters squared is the answer for number 2. These are going to get trickier in the next few days, so give yourself some snaps if you got that. If not, try to figure out where was it that you made your mistake. And we'll do some more tomorrow. Okay, last one, number 3. You guys are doing a great job. Give yourself some snaps. True or false? So this is using what we learned about up here. So if this was confusing to you, pay attention now and it might make it a little more clear. So 9/5 times 4 is greater than 4. That's what this is saying. We need to say true or false. 9/5 times 4 is greater than 4. Is that true or false? Okay, so this is kind of what we were just doing a minute ago. You're going to look at the fraction that you're multiplying times this whole number. If that fraction is greater than 1, then it's going to be, when you multiply it times 4, the answer is going to be greater than 4. If this fraction was equal to 1, like 4/4 or 5/5, and we multiplied it times 4, the product is going to be equal to 4 because you really did 4 times 1. Now, if this fraction was less than 1, like a regular fraction, like 2/3 or 1/4 or 3/4, less than 1, when you multiply it times 4, the answer is going to be less than 4 because you're multiplying 4 times a fraction that's less than 1, so it's going to be less than this factor of 4. So since 9/5 is greater than 1, right, 5/5 would be 1 whole, so 9/5 is more than 1 whole. So if we're multiplying 4 times a fraction that's more than 1, it's going to end up being greater than 4. So this is saying 9/5 times 4 is greater than 4. That is true. And let me try to explain that again. Okay? You're taking 4 here, and you're multiplying it times a fraction that's greater than 1. So if this fraction is greater than 1, and you're multiplying it times 4, it's going to make 4 bigger. It's going to make 4 greater. So when this is saying 9/5 times 4 is greater than 4, yes, that is true because 1 times 4 is equal to 4. So a fraction that's more than 1 times 4 is going to be more than 4. It's going to be greater than 4. So this, 9/5 times 4 is greater than 4, is true. So the answer here was true. All right, so that's it. Here are the final answers. Give yourself some snaps. Those are pretty tricky. Those are all kind of new stuff today, so nice work. All right, I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you later. Bye.